Russian President Vladimir Putin's nearly quarter-century grip on power appears locked in for another 6 years. Early results from the country's three-day presidential election paint a picture of a record landslide victory, and that one that experts say is hardly a surprise. CTV's Tony Grace on a final day of voting that drew protests in Canada and around the world.
From this march in the streets of Paris to long lines outside Russian embassies in London and Rome, protests over Vladimir Putin's lock on power.
Not all the Russians are for Putin. There are some who are against, and we are here to vote against Putin too.
On the final day of voting, coordinated noon-hour lineups called for by one of Putin's top critics, opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died in an Arctic prison last month. Today, Navalny's widow, Yulia, welcomed at this line in Berlin. In a vote where Putin had virtually no competition, early results from Russia's Central Election Commission pointed to a landslide victory and a term that could see him become the longest-serving leader in 200 years.
I
want to thank the citizens of Russia, Putin said late tonight. We are all one team. The source of authority in the nation is the Russian people. Later adding that he believes the election is democratic.
He's in the midst of trying to reassert his power in the face of growing discontent.
Discontent over the war in Ukraine, his crackdown on dissent, and Russia's isolation on the world stage. Inside Russia, quieter signs of that defiance, lines that suddenly grew at noon, leaving lingering questions about how well received Putin actually is.
Putin is less popular than he was a few years ago because of the war in Ukraine.
Today, Russia held ballots inside Ukrainian communities it claims as its own, as Ukraine pushed back in the two-year war. Russia said it shot down 35 Ukrainian drones and said escalating Ukrainian attacks in the border town of Belgorod turned deadly. This Russian dictator is simulating another election, said Ukraine's president, saying the world understands Putin is addicted to power and wanting to rule forever. In Canada, an attempt to understand how Russians truly feel.
This is extremely important. This year, no observers were allowed on the polling stations abroad.
The Russian-Canadian Democratic Alliance holding its own exit poll outside the embassy in Ottawa.
This is the only opportunity to have some kind of information about what is really happening.
And in some of the lines today, signs of Putin's support.
Perché è lui, è Putin.
Thanks to Putin, Russia has become strong and united, said this woman in Italy. Results from those exit polls at the embassy in Ottawa and at the consulates in Montreal and Toronto are being tabulated late tonight in an effort to get a clear picture of the Russian voice in this country. Heather.
All right, Tony, thank you. Israeli